You know, we live in a world where there is more information now than ever before. I saw an ad where it showed a Radio Shack ad from the 1980s, and it said, everything that was in this Radio Shack ad in the 1980s is now in your pocket. And I thought, that's very true, because there was a phone there was a television, a radio, books, clocks, all these different things were there. And now they're all whittled down and in your phone and in your pocket. So you would think that this generation would be the most well-informed people of all time, but instead it's the exact opposite. We have more misinformed people running around and more people just choosing to live in their own bubble and never look out of it. And when they do that, when they go into their own bubble, the only information that they'll allow to come in is information that fits their preconceived notion of how things are. Because if they're made to think outside that bubble, think outside that box, and look at it from a different point of view, it makes them uncomfortable. And suddenly they start accusing people, well, you're trying to cram it down our throats, you're trying to ram it in our face. You're trying to force us to believe like you do, and that's not the case at all. It's just that the world is changing, the world is revolving around these people who choose to live in their bubble and who choose to live in this alternate reality. The only information that they will allow into that bubble is information that fits their preconceived notions. And it turns out that they end up living in a completely alternate reality from the rest of us. Someone like Donald Trump came along and he cashed in on all that. He figured out how to get out there and perform this theater of an alternate reality, and those people would buy it because everything he was saying fits their preconceived notion as to how everything is, and everything he was saying empowered all of the hatred and bigotry that they'd had bottled up in them for years. But to those that thinks, oh man, everybody's trying to shove stuff in my face, everybody's trying to cram it down my throat, have you ever actually thought about it from another person's point of view? Have you ever actually thought about what it would be like to live here in the Bible Belt and be an atheist? Have you ever thought about that? Because I can tell you what that's like. You drive down the road, and everywhere you go, there's a church on every corner. The road that I used to live on, I passed by 4 churches before I made the turn to go to my house. And I could have stood on the parking lot of one of them and threw rocks into the parking lots of the other. That's how close together they were. There was a Baptist church, a Methodist church, a Pentecostal church, and like a Free Will Baptist church, all there in one clump. I had to drive by them every day. They were always doing their events. They were always having their things that they were doing. Drove past them every day. Everywhere I went in this world, walked in any department store, I would walk back and I would see big displays of Joel Osteen and Billy Graham books everywhere I went. Go over into the clothing department. There was all sorts of Christian t-shirts everywhere I went. Go to flea markets in this part of the world, and there's gospel cassettes still, that people still listen to those things, but there's gospel music everywhere, Christian stuff everywhere. And if you are an atheist living in this part of the world, you just walk through going, yeah, well, not much I can do to change this. I mean, I don't agree with what they're teaching their children. I feel like they're grooming their children and they're indoctrinating their children the wrong way. But what right do I have to tell them what to do? So just let them do it. And you go to football games around here, and I know this might make a couple of people's head explode outside this part of the world, but around here they still pray at football games and basketball games, and you just stand there going, well, okay, let them go ahead, because it ain't going to matter. The results are going to be the same at the end of the day. But you live through that, and you face it every day of your life, and you just go on with your life. Now, I imagine that it would be pretty rough also if you lived in this part of the world and you were gay. And everywhere you went, you saw straight couples holding hands. Everywhere you went, you saw straight couples with arms around each other. Everywhere you went, every song you heard was about a straight relationship. Every movie you saw had straight people in it. I imagine that from their point of view, everything is being shoved in their face. But people gets comfortable over there where they are, and then when they look over and see this one gay couple, they're appalled. Or if one atheist speaks out, suddenly they're appalled. Oh no, this atheist said something that rocked the boat. I'm not going to allow that. Oh, atheism's taking over. It's everywhere. Where is it? To the average, straight, white Christian dude, where is this persecution that you all are always talking about? Where is it happening? Where are you being persecuted? You are the most pampered group of people in the history of the world. You're more pampered than anyone I've ever seen, and you do the most complaining of anyone I've ever seen. I know atheist people in this part of the world that don't cry and whine as much as you do. I know gay and trans people in this part of the world that don't cry and whine as much as you do. I know people of color in this part of the world, they don't cry and whine as much as you do. You cry and whine about everything the world is changing around you. You stay in that bubble, and then you get mad at anyone else who talks about something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Where is this persecution happening? Where are you being silenced and censored, other than you're not allowed to say the N word on social media? I mean, really, it's when I see people, I've had people message me and go, man, your followers was mean to me. And I went and looked to see what was going on, and they were just basically fact checking the person. They're being mean to you. Meanwhile, I've got messages I could show you of people wishing death and cancer and everything else on me and my children and everybody else, and that's perfectly okay. That's perfectly Christian of them, I guess. It's absolutely one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Step outside your bubble, realize that there's life out there, and realize that just because something gets fed to the masses, and just because some people enjoys living in alternate realities, does not make it true. If you will step outside your bubble for just a minute, you will realize that, hey, there's a whole new frontier out here that I've yet to discover. There's a whole new world out here that I've yet to discover. And when you acknowledge another person's problem, when you acknowledge another person's plight in this world, it doesn't diminish yours at all. You can share your experiences. You can talk about what it was like growing up in the holler, what it was like growing up poor. You can do that. You can still have that conversation. And it doesn't mean that you weren't brought up hard. It doesn't mean that you don't work hard right now. It doesn't mean any of those things. Just because you look over and you recognize that someone else worked just as hard and someone else should have a fair shake in this world, it's not about handouts. It's not about us wanting to give handouts to people. It's about us wanting other people, all people, to have a fair hand to play in this world. That's what it is. We want people to have a hand to play in this world. And we don't buy into your pull it up by the bootstraps bullshit, because we've learned that the only people who you care about pulling up by the bootstraps are people that looks and sounds like you. And we're over here focusing on people who don't even have boots. So step outside your bubble, and I'll always be the guy over here attempting to burst that bubble. You step outside of it, come over here and talk to us, and realize, hey, we've all got something to bring to the table, and we can all move this story forward. Or you can stay back here in the dark ages.